After 3.5 years of intense meditation, really, my body failed. Sometimes my mind would blame the teacher also, because the teacher was trying to help you actually and push you also up and help you to move further. But I had to go back to Europe myself to see that actually it wasn't a teacher who was pushing me. It was my own mind. In Europe, you're just a beggar. You go to take alms, you're not even a Buddhist nun or anything, nobody knows. You're just a beggar standing there, a barefoot girl without hair who is hungry. That's all, So that kind of brings you into reality. In Spain, I spent about three months, I spent not even in a cave, on a rock in the mountains. And I was so happy just to see that you can live like that. You don't need anything. It's amazing. Accidentally, you think accidentally? I don't know, but I was very miserable at the time and I was just searching for something and I saw this is here and this is available and I just go for it. I still sincerely believe it is possible to make an end of suffering in this very life.
The story of getting Sayalay Piyadassii to share her background is the story of our recording studio installation. It had taken us some time to get the studio ready, and I waited in anxiety throughout the process as one inspiring Dhamma person after another passed through Yangon, sometimes through our very own home, all without being able to retain their voice before they were off to their next destination. The studio had only been set up a day or two before I happened to run into Sayalay at a funeral, and she immediately agreed to come on our new show. She later commented that her own mother had passed away recently, and she felt that sharing about her progress in the Dhamma for others to hear and benefit from, and then sharing the accumulated merit for doing so with her departed mother, was the one way that she could truly help her now. The timing was more than fortunate to make it work as well, since Sayalay does not reside in Yangon and splits her time between her monastery in Theton and the Shan State Buddhist University in Taunji, with periodic trips back home to Lithuania. The process of transformation is a key theme that comes about during Sayalay's talk, a topic that should prove helpful and thought-provoking for any yogi on the path. Sayalay's transformation takes several stages, first into a serious lay meditator, and then into a Buddhist nun in Myanmar, and finally through a series of further transformative processes during her continued journey of renunciation. Her courage in speaking so honestly about her past difficulties and robes, and about the ensuing strategies and reflections in making various adjustments along the way, provide the meditator a kind of lightness and openness that gently encourages a similar kind of examination into one's own practice. When taking on a new media project, such as this Insight Myanmar podcast, there could be a desire to get these A-level guests, that is, the biggest household names in the field, which would help your show stand out and show it could book those biggest names. However, when creating the vision and the mission for our podcast project, it was really the stories of the Sayalay Piyadassiis that we were particularly keen to air. Hearing how a deeply committed meditator navigates the spiritual byways of Burmese Buddhism, largely in secluded practice, is at least as valuable and instructive as speaking with any of the country's leading Sayadaws who give Dhamma discourses on TV to an audience of millions. So while the name on this episode may not be immediately recognizable to listeners browsing their podcast directories searching for the next long-form interview to play, we think the content of her talk will stay with you for some time. For now, that's enough for me. Let me pass the mic over to Sayalay and hear more about how she got to the Golden Land and what she's been up to since arriving. Okay, so very happy to be talking to Sayalay Piyadassii from Lithuania. I think we met in 2013 the first time. I think, is that correct?
Probably, yes. Actually, these new friends, they were asking, how do you know Joah? And, yeah, I don't remember actually the first time we met.
I think did I meet you before your ordination? Did you come to Shui Min while I was there?
Maybe only briefly, huh?
Yeah. I think I have a memory of that.
I also thought of Shui Min, yeah.
So somehow our beginning of our friendship is a little unclear, but definitely we've had a lot of contact since then. We have a lot of mutual friends. And I just met you a couple days ago unexpectedly at a funeral service and found that you were in Yangon for the following week before you go back to your university in Taunji. And I roped you into coming to our new studio and sitting in to share some things about your incredible background and life journey that I think will be very good listening for a lot of meditators out there.
Yeah, it's a very nice space here. Thank you for inviting.
Yeah. So first, I'm wondering if we could just know a little bit more about your background. I know you're from Lithuania, but I know that you have good sourdough bread there from our morning conversations, but I don't know much more than that. So just if you can tell a little bit about your upbringing and family and early life.
All right. So Lithuania is, for those who don't know, is somewhere in the northeast of Europe and maybe next to Poland. It used to be a part of Soviet Union, so I was born in Soviet Union, in the former Soviet Union. Then it broke down. And religious-wise, I was always curious to know what is there. And the only option at the time as a child, we had like a church, Christian church, so I was very active, the only active person in the whole family. And I found myself as a child, somebody to baptize me, and I was running to church and everything. But then, as I think, not only with me as it happened, but like as I grew up, the pink colors faded, and the faith also dissipated. And after some time not going to church, and one day just passing by and seeing many, many people, I went in and I felt nothing. So I understood, okay, this is finished. And I just was searching what is available at that time.
How old were you at that time?
Teenager. It's difficult to say, teenager. But whoever would come to my small little town called Klaipėda on the spiritual part, like, I don't know, we had many different esoteric things going on. So whatever lectures there were, I would go and listen and pretend that I'm older than I am, and going for attending classes in the School of Astra Yoga from St. Petersburg, and searching whatever is available. But eventually,
what was available in those days of, I don't know what age the Soviet Union turned into Lithuania on your spiritual development path, but I wouldn't think much would be available in the Soviet Union times. And as things started to open up, I wonder how fast Eastern spirituality came.
I think pretty quickly. I think in the time of Soviet Union, things were underground. So once that broke up, the underground came on the surface, and things became like more freely available. Like when I was in the university, my lab teacher gave me books of Castaneda to read. And,
Carlos Castaneda.
Right.
Yes.
And so all these kind of things I was...
Translated in Lithuanian?
No, in Russian, actually.
Oh, okay.
In Russian. And but eventually after all the long searches, I sat my Goenka course in, I think, 2007. And
in Lithuania?
No, that was in England. Accidentally. You think accidentally? I don't know, but I was very miserable at the time, and I was just searching for something, and I saw this is here and this is available, and I just go for it. And yes, that changed my life into this form now. Basically,
yes.
That was the starting point of this career.
For listeners that can't see the gesture that you made when you said in this form, you're indicating your shaven head and your robes that you're wearing, and
right.
I suppose connecting a line from your first Goenka experience in England to the nun robes that you're wearing now.
Yes, so that's in short, I think.
That first Goenka course, was that your introduction with Buddhism, or had you had encounters with Buddhism, or if people prefer with Dhamma or with Vipassana meditation before?
Yes, I remember when I was still in university, I had one a little bit crazy friend. And I remember one time visiting her, and she had many different books and everything. And I saw this thick green book with golden letters, Buddhism. I thought, oh, can I borrow this? Can I borrow that? She said, sure. But that was mostly about Japanese Buddhism and like Zen kind of riddles. And, the Eightfold Noble Path is actually all sounds quite mysterious, the right thought, what is, like the correct, actually, maybe the correct or correct, what, but no explanation what is what. So I just read it and I thought, well, that's all right. But I don't really understand much. And okay, that's interesting. That's all. But actually, when I was taking my first course, I could see, oh, that's what was meant. Actually, it's so simple.
Right.
It's so simple. So, yes, basically, I think my Buddhist path started with that course.
Right. It's funny how some similar influences reach us even from very, very diverse backgrounds, because I also I remember reading some D.T. Suzuki, who was a very famous author about Japanese Buddhism and how much that influenced me. Krishnamurti, Autobiography of a Yogi, and Carlos Castaneda. I read the first Carlos Castaneda before my first Goenka course and was very moved by it. And I was halfway through my second Castaneda when I took my second Goenka course. And I remember finishing that course and starting to open up the book and just feeling like I'm done. Like this isn't for me anymore. Like this isn't my path. This isn't my practice. I don't mean to be dismissive of the author or people who follow him, but for me at that time in my life, I was what I was learning through the Goenka Vipassana technique was so important and correct for me at that time that these other things that had brought me there started to fade away and to prioritize something else. So it's interesting coming from very different backgrounds.
Right, you see. We are all same, but different.
I guess there's a couple questions I'd be interested in, and they kind of complement each other. One would be a typical day, which will give an idea of what activities you do and how your day looks. But then I would also be interested in pulling back and looking at like a typical year, because a typical day at one time might be different than a typical day another time. So we might be missing some aspect of your life. So maybe start with one and go with the other.
Okay, so actually it's very difficult to give any typical day or any typical year even. If I think back, every year was different in some way or another. But say for the first 3.5 years, it was only meditation. Only meditation.
In 2013 was when you ordained?
Yes,
okay.
I ordained in 2013. And
when you say only meditation, how many hours a day are we talking? How many days a month are we talking?
Like every day. Every day, maybe 8-10 hours. It was full-on retreats, continuous. Say not 365 days, okay, because sometimes things happen, you need to go to hospital or whatever. But mostly the vast majority of days were only meditation. And I was lucky to have good teachers, and I was lucky to find the place where I could get good guidance and where a teacher would instruct you and question you the way that you couldn't slack in your meditation.
Were these mostly Burmese teachers? Was this all in Myanmar?
Yeah, Burmese.
So exclusively Burmese teachers?
Only Burmese teachers, but speaking in English. I had only, for 3 months, I stayed in a monastery where sometimes I would have interview with a translator, and I didn't like that. So I really preferred to have an interview in the language directly with the teacher. So that made me to try to learn Burmese, but even now, it's enough only to tell a taxist where to go or, these kind of things. But for the meditation interview, I still would need a support from a side if it's in Burmese. So I tried to find an English-speaking teacher. So, yeah, I was quite lucky. But after 3.5 years of intense meditation, really, my body failed. And I think one thing was the body, the health condition, but it surely was also connected with the mind condition, because I also was pushing myself so much, which is quite natural. We come, we ordain, we want to, and I sincerely believe, I still sincerely believe it is possible to make an end of suffering in this very life. So in the beginning, with all the enthusiasm, you put so much energy and effort, and you think by the more energy and effort you will put, the sooner you will get there. So I was pushing myself a lot. Sometimes my mind would blame the teacher also, because the teacher was trying to help you actually and push you also up and help you to move further. But I had to go back to Europe myself to see that actually it was not a teacher who was pushing me. It was my own mind.
And how were you pushing yourself? What form did that take?
I think slight mental tension, or maybe blaming oneself, or dissatisfaction with one's present condition in meditation, say.
So it was more like a mental attitude than like an extreme physical effort.
Yes, definitely.
Interesting.
Right. Not that I was, I don't know, trying to exhaust my body or anything. No, mentally, of course. But at that time, I wouldn't admit it. But the thing is, what happened, I felt very ill. To the extent that I couldn't digest the food anymore. And my teacher advised me to go back to Europe and to get myself back in a shape, in a form that I could meditate again. So I went out of the country for 1.5 years, and I could digest whatever I have ingested in these 3.5 years. It was a wonderful experience. And
when you say you can digest, you mean conceptually you digested teachings, or physically food?
Because in the monastery where I was staying, we get the teachings so densely packed teachings, and the teacher is trying to squeeze in you as much as possible in as short as possible time. There is no physically, even or mentally, time to actually to absorb it and to understand what is happening. So when I went back to Europe, I put myself in the conditions where I had the space and time to reflect, to practice slowly, and to see, and to apply whatever I have learned, and to see the beauty of the teachings out of the cultural context of Buddhism.
Right.
When I was leaving the country, I was saying, no, I'm not coming back any soon.
To Myanmar.
Yes, I will come back only when I feel like, I want to go back. And yes, 1.5 year later, I felt like, all right, now I really want to go back.
And you were in robes in your home country.
Yes, of course. And then I was staying in one monastery meditating, and then at that time, I was both meditating and studying. More meditating, but as a time, resting time, was studying, especially Abhidhamma, because Myanmar is an Abhidhamma country. It's not just vipassana country, it's Abhidhamma country. And I had an excellent teacher who could explain Abhidhamma very clearly and has a very good methodology. And so I was just taking an advantage of that. And then I was called to one university, to join one university. My former Pali teacher, from whom I learned in India when I still was a laywoman, Goenka student. So that teacher joined a newly established university in Taunji, and he wrote me an email, why don't I come? I thought, all right, if a teacher is calling, I have to go. So now I'm studying Pali, Sanskrit, Prakrit, academical Buddhist studies, this kind of thing. So now my focus has shifted from meditation into study. So I have 3 intense semesters for 9 weeks. And then between them, I can do what I like. I want to meditate, I can meditate. I want to study more, I can study more. It's all up to me. So I'm quite flexible. Right. I have a lot of freedom.
Right. So to go back and kind of track your your spiritual journey and your path from ordination. So you came to Myanmar as a laywoman, primarily a Goenka meditator. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then somehow when you were here, did you have the plan in your mind to ordain when you came as a laywoman, or did that happen all of a sudden?
No, I did. When I was leaving, when I was about to leave, I sat together with my mother and I said, Mom, it may happen. But I say, maybe for a long time or for a short time, I don't know. But this may happen, or maybe it will not happen. I don't know what the conditions will be. So that was in my mind. But I didn't know until I came. I didn't know, will there be conditions? Will there be a place? Will there be a teacher? Or will there not be conditions? So I just came with an open mind, with a meditation visa and with an open mind.
Yeah. Do you recall the first time you heard about the possibility of monasticism? Because this is something that in our cultures doesn't really exist as a functioning part of our society. So I'm wondering, for Westerners, it's often very, the very concept of what it means to be a monastic is something that reverberates quite differently, where we have a vacuum of that field in our country. So I'm wondering, since you've chosen that vocation, do you remember the first time you came in contact with the idea that this was even something possible?
I think I have heard about some nuns when, you see, before coming to Myanmar, I stayed in the Goenka Center in UK for nearly a year. And, when you stay long enough, you hear stories of people. So there are the nuns who, from UK, who have ordained in Burma, and, now in other places, whatever, their path is developing. And so you hear that, yes, this is possible. So I think I just heard while staying in the meditation center that nothing concrete, how would it go? You don't have any idea, but when you have an open mind, you just go and see.
So how did the idea start to take hold on you?
The thing is that the whole my life increasingly was turning around meditation, and I was either sitting a course or serving a course, and from time to time just working a little bit just so that I can sit a course or serve a course. So mostly I was involved in that and working just on the side. And then I thought, maybe I can do full time. Why do I have to go up and down, up and down? You go and meditate, and then, you go out again. And it's kind of swinging back and forth. I just thought maybe I just want to immerse myself fully.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so then when you came to Myanmar, how did, as you started getting closer to that ordination, what was the mental process and that attraction?
Oh, very easy, actually, very simple. One thing, first I went to, after sitting a long course here, I went to, my first monastery to which I went was Shwe Min. The choice was very simple, actually. My friend chose for me. She said, I ordained together with another friend. And at that time, she went to some retreat. And she said, while I'm in retreat, you better go there. And you wait for me. I will come and pick you up. And then we see what we are doing. And she actually said to me, this same as Goenka, same. Don't worry, it's more or less same. So no problem, you just go there and wait for me. So I sincerely believing it's same as Goenka. I just went there, And when I arrived, I understand, they give me books, you have to read before you meditate.
Where was
and
this?
How to meditate.
Shwe Min, okay.
Right, so I'm reading, that's not completely same. It's a little bit something up. But okay, I'm here. I'm already here. So, and there were many Westerners or just foreigners who already have a lot of experience of being to different places. And it's not a noble silence center. So people do talk and there is a lot of exchange of information. And on the same day when I arrived there, we arrived there with another two people. One went to one meditation center and another one, he was on his way to Paok Sayadaw, who was leading a retreat in Pinolin at that time. And he was an old student of his. And I interviewed him for a couple of hours about what does he teach, how is it, what about the meditation. And so he sounded very, very inspiring. And then when that friend came out of that retreat, I don't remember whether she called me or she just came and she told me, I've been to Pinolin, to that center. I asked Sayadaw if he will ordain us. And he said yes. So, shall we go? That was that.
And that's what happened.
And that's what happened.
So you were ordained by Paok?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
He ordains freely anybody who comes. He encourages everybody who comes. He encourages, even you don't want, he encourages you to ordain.
So one thing that's interesting, just to stop and reflect on the last couple minutes of what you've been sharing, is you've just kind of freely thrown around the names of a lot of very venerated Sayadaws and different meditation centers and different traditions. For those that are familiar with Myanmar and the practice here, they can probably follow along pretty easily. For those that have never been or have just a vague understanding, these are probably names that are just whizzing by at different warp speeds. So now is not the time to go into all the different histories and traditions of these Sayadaws, but I'm wondering, I think it's interesting to take this moment to just reflect on what this means about being in Myanmar, where there's all this activity and all this diversity of instruction, and yet all coming from acknowledging the same source and the same goal of what they're teaching. So I'm wondering if you could speak to just this coming as a fresh meditator with very little experience and having this kind of whirlwind of centers and teachers suddenly available.
Yes, well, it's quite natural for people who know only one tradition to be attached to that tradition because that's what they know. And not only in the West, here too. Like if you go to Mahasi Center, you better come from Mahasi Center, and you don't say that you're coming from, I don't know, from Paok. Say I would have maybe to change into pink or what, I don't know.
Right, because the robes you're wearing are identified as what nuns wear from Paok, correct?
Right.
Brown color.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
whereas
in Mahasi,
Burmese nuns typically wear pink and you're
yeah.
wearing brown.
Yes. There is a strategy against that actually, that I see in my university. So in my university, even though we focused on academic studies of Buddhism, there is a meditation subject. It's obligatory. And not just theoretical studies of the theory of meditation, of Theravada meditation, maybe not only Theravada, I don't know. But also, a student has to take at least 2 meditation retreats, in a tradition that is not his.
Where is this requirement from?
In SSBU, in the Shan State Buddhist University.
Okay, right.
And I think it's great. What it allows you to see that the method is the method. But the qualities of the mind are the qualities of the mind. And the aim of meditation is to develop the good qualities, the wholesome qualities of the mind. And so whatever tradition is, it has its value. It helps in one way or another. And for one person, one method may be more suitable. For another person, maybe another method is more suitable. So it's worthwhile to be free enough to try and to see what is more suitable for you.
So that leads into the next question I was going to ask, which is being a little more granular and specific about the meditation journey that you had. You came in as a Goenka student. Goenka is what brought you to his homeland of wanting to practice the Dhamma. And then as you took robes, your spiritual journey unfolded. So I'm wondering if you can speak to what you were practicing at different stages since your ordination.
Well, one thing that I knew already when I came to this country, that I need to develop concentration. I was sitting long courses, not only one, and what became clear to me from that what I need to actually, Vipassana is good, but for Vipassana to be effective, more effective, or maybe for me, to attain anything, I need to develop more concentration, and say 1/3 of the course for concentration for me is not enough. And I thought to myself naively, okay, so I'll go now to Paok, and I quickly, I go through all these jhanas, and then I go back to Goenka and I can practice Vipassana happily and I will attain everything, okay? That didn't happen. But yes, I was working a long time on concentration. It takes longer than it took longer than
So Paok was basically your first stop? So
yes.
you had
main stop.
So you had a respite at Chwayumin, and then that took you soon after to Paok, where your ordination happened, and then for you would reference the number 3.5 years of intense practice. So was that the intense Paok practice you're referring to?
Yes.
So you were 3.5 years at Paok Moyumain or Pyongyang?
No, I was staying the first year. I ordained in Pinulvin. Then after some time, I went for a short time to Mandalay, and then some compassionate friends of mine, seeing that I'm very unhappy there, sent me to Indigo. Indigo is where Dhammanidhi the same village, so near Yangon, near Bago.
That's the Goenka Long Course Center.
Right. So there is one PAOK branch center, very small. So we were maybe, say on average, about maybe 10 people. And so I knew Sayadaw can spend a lot of time to us, and he knows our meditation very well, better than we. And I had full trust in him, and that was perfect condition for me. But I would follow the instructions that Sayadaw would give. But actually, I think the most progress I made when I went to Spain. Very interestingly, because when I went out of this culture, out of this place, into say, real world, I could immediately see what qualities are lacking and what qualities are there. What do I need to develop? And okay, so what is already developed? So whereas in any system of meditation, I think when it is a system, then the teacher will say, no, first you do this, and then when you attain this, you do this, and then no, that you don't do now. No. This, when you attain that, then you can, so. But in Spain, I was my own teacher. I could practice, and I could see that. So the main thing, my friend drew me a map of where one cave is, and she said, okay, you can stay there. So I went to a cave, and, cave doesn't have a door. And the very first night, I realized, okay, Sally, your heart has to be as open as this cave. Anybody can come in, and anybody comes in, I have to welcome. Otherwise, I cannot stay here. How? And I understood what I have to develop is mettā. So I was working, that became my main practice.
Loving kindness,
yes,
mettā.
For a long, long time. And that actually allowed me later to develop higher mind. So it's good. I don't know. So that's my way. And even I didn't practice vipassana in PAOK systematically. So anyway, I have not practiced vipassana according to PAOK Sayadaw. But what I was doing with my increasing intellectual understanding of the Dhamma, I just try to follow the Dhamma every day, every moment.
In Spain?
In Spain and in here when I came back also. So because I was lucky to find a monastery, to stay in a monastery where also Sayadaw doesn't push any of his friends, he calls us friends, he doesn't push us in any direction. So me being happy in Spain, my body recovered quickly.
What was your body problem?
I had some poisoning, and I don't remember which parasite I had. I had some parasite.
Okay.
And I couldn't digest food anymore. So the digestion was the issue.
So when you talk about not being able to digest, it sounds like it's literal as well as figurative.
Yes,
you literally couldn't digest food as you figuratively couldn't digest Dhamma teachings coming to you.
Yes, it's very connected. I think it's very connected. And I think the parasite was just like a manifestation of, of what had to happen anyway. So after having digested the Dhamma, or having become healthy again, mentally and bodily, I decided to come back to Burma because it's even how good it is, how good it was to stay in Spain. It is still not a Buddhist country, and I just felt a need for a supportive monastic community, which was lacking there. And so, I came back.
In what year?
I think 2017.
And then where did your spiritual journey pick up at that time?
I went to one monastery recommended by a friend, and it's not a meditation center. Even it's called Yeita, it's not a meditation center, and it's not a study center. It's a monastery where Sayadaw supports anybody who is sincere in his Dhamma practice. If you want to study, you can study. If you want to meditate, you meditate. He just supports you physically, and he can give you instructions in meditations if you ask him. If you don't ask, and you're happy with what you're doing, he will support. So, and he's very flexible. He's trained in PAOK method, but he's very flexible. So he allowed me to practice whatever I wanted to practice, and if I needed support for instructions, and he would give instructions. He taught me Abhidhamma and many things. So, but my main undertaking at that time was just to follow the Dhamma.
And so what does that mean in practical terms, like from 2000? So, and to clarify, from 2017 until just recently when you enrolled in Shan State Buddhist University, you were mainly based at this monastery?
Yes.
And how would you describe the form your practice took in those years?
I was mainly meditating.
Meditating in what style?
It depended on my mind, really. It depended on my mind.
Can you give some examples?
Well, for example, I like very much, if I need concentration, I like to practice light kasina. So, and
which is, can you explain briefly?
Light kasina?
Light kasina, yeah.
Oh, you just focus on light. You focus your mind on a concept of light, and then the mind becomes very bright, and you're just knowing the brightness.
And this was one of the 40 techniques given by the Buddha, is that correct?
Oh, well, you want to be precise?
Oh.
Actually, yes, it's in the 40 subjects listed in Visuddhimagga, let's say so, given by the Buddha. I don't know. Well, we find the Buddha says that to focus on the perception of light if you feel sleepy. So we see this, but there is no list anywhere in the suttas of 40 meditation subjects, and even in other sources, or even in the commentaries, we see the list of 38, and light kasina is not there. But it's a very good object. For me, it's a very happy object. So what I know now. So for meditation to be successful, the mind has to be happy with what he's knowing, with the object. If we are bored with our anapana, but we are pushing it again and again to the breath, it's not very effective, really. Our mind has to be happy with what it is knowing.
So that's one example of like a form your meditation takes depending on the state that you're aware of. What would be other examples of the form that it takes these past couple of years?
Right. So the same mettā.
Mettā. Yeah.
The same mettā.
Loving kindness.
Right. Or on the vipassana side, sometimes when if the mind is just naturally becoming aware of the change. Whatever change, I'm not restricting myself to an object of what is changing, because everything is changing. So whatever it can know, whatever, or if it's naturally seeing the cause and effect, I just allow things to happen naturally, really. Because with the concentration, things become obvious, and which things is not for me to choose. And there are sometimes I had really, really intense experiences just because the mind becomes very, very sharp, but you still live in a community, and it's not, say, a formal course where everybody's silent and walking. Things do happen, and with this concentrated mind, when some things, shocking things may happen, then it can trigger a real process.
Can you give an example?
Well, I don't want to go into details, really, because it can be very painful also.
Sure.
But, through pain we learn the most. And I'm not talking about physical pain. Though it comes together, it can come together.
It sounds like, generally, you're referring to like triggering of trauma.
Like this. But we have many, many methods of how to work with that. And when we live in the community, say I have other nuns friends who can give me support, or the teacher. Now, in such cases, maybe I would feel more confident to talk to a female practitioner in this way. But then, very, very unexpectedly, on my personal journey, the deepest seeing of reality for me happened in the university.
The Shan State Buddhist University?
When studying.
Yeah. Can you give an example of that? Or
it's also very...
difficult to do?
It's very, how to say, it will go... I will not go into details, but the studies make the mind also concentrated, very concentrated, especially when very intense, and still things are happening, just as I said now and previously in the monastery, but maybe more things are happening. And just the mind just got a very, very deep shock, and it was shaking so much. The mind suddenly started seeing the reality much deeper than ever before for a number of days. It was a very interesting experience, really. So now I'm very relaxed about any methods or attachments or whatever. I think as long as we're just following the teachings, as long as we're keeping our sila, we practice really any kind of purification of the mind or keeping the control of the mind and developing good qualities and not allowing the unwholesome qualities to overwhelm the mind is enough. And we don't know how near or far are we from deeper realizations. We never know.
Right. I think what's interesting in hearing you talk, what I'm reflecting on is that I'm thinking that some meditators who've never been to Myanmar or maybe only been very briefly understand their practice from a very gifted teacher that is able to give a very, whoever that teacher may be, not speaking of one specifically, but a teacher who's able to package this whole experience and give instructions that lead you on the path. And that really gives you something to hold on to. There is a way to practice. There's a way to make sure you're practicing the right way. And in hearing you talk now, I think there could be a sense of listlessness, of floating, of coming from a background where you have something to grab onto. You have check marks where you're able to see what you're supposed to be doing and how you're doing it, and kind of the free form that you're describing. I think is contrast to that. So I think that would that could be something challenging for people to understand even how that works or how coming from something more regimented. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I mean, when you're learning anything,
sure,
you're learning the system first. And once you've learned the system, then you can improvise, right? To play on the piano, you do your gammas first. You cannot improvise immediately, no?
Right.
But then once you know all the harmonies and everything, okay, you can then produce some really nice jazz. But I think same with the Dhamma practice. It's good to have methods. These are tools, so you can draw them out when you need them. But to be able to do that, you first have to learn, to make the tools so you have them and you're ready when you need them.
How those tools work and the method of using them.
And there are so many. There are so many. So I would advise to have more tools you have is better.
Right, especially when all those tools are coming from one primary teacher.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
It's interesting using that. That's a very good way to kind of tie those things together. And it's interesting using that analogy of like musical improvisation. A mutual friend of ours has a different analogy he's described, and that's of Dhamma childhood, Dhamma adolescence, Dhamma adulthood. And he's described the experience of working with a very regimented set of instructions as being something of Dhamma childhood. And when you're in a childhood, you do need to be told things. You don't have the wisdom or the independence on your own to be able to make really good decisions for your life. You need that protection. But there comes a time when you reach adolescence. Any human being reaches adolescence, and then you don't quite always make the right decisions, but you do want a little bit more freedom and kind of testing the edges and seeing what you can get away with, seeing what the consequences of things are, taking control of your own decision making, and kind of like a snake coming out of its skin. He's described in vivid language his own painful passage from Dhamma childhood to Dhamma adolescence. So just to share, that's interesting that's another way of looking at what you've described as kind of the musical creative improvisation that you've grown into.
Mm-hmm. And Dhamma is beautiful, and we can bring that beauty in our life not by just playing gammas, but when we really become skillful to see the beauty and everywhere in any form, not just do, re, mi, fa, sol.
Do you come from a musical background?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know why it comes to my mind now.
No. Right. Taking on the decision to wear the robes and be a monastic, how has that affected your practice different from being a normal lay meditator?
you don't have to do the things that lay people do, like going and seeing this and that, and how to spend my weekend and this party or that, all that. You don't have to distract yourself, which I felt previously. I felt obliged myself that, well, it's weekend, you should do something, maybe. Nothing like that. You can just meditate and meditate and meditate, or study, whatever. No need to think about anything else, really.
Right. Yeah. I think when some serious meditators hear about the possibility of ordination, for one thing, it's hard to imagine what monasticism is. As I said earlier in the talk, it's not a vocation we really grew up with in our society, so it's difficult to even imagine the concept of that. But when someone serious on the path of meditation starts to contemplate being a monastic, it's hard to imagine that experience as anything other than, so it's basically a meditation course every day of my life. It's basically just what I do on a meditation course, I'm just going to do every day. That's all there is to life.
Well, I thought that initially when I ordained, maybe the first 7 months or something, they were like this for me. And then because I was moving to another monastery, there's some distraction and new places and everything. But that what was taking place in the beginning. But that's, of course, not all. One thing on the course, like on a Goenka course, your noble silence, and you cut off everything, and in a meditation center or in a monastery, you can do, it's up to you. Or you do that or you don't do that. So it's up to you. And there is much more space for, I think, now in the monastic life, for actually still to be deep in meditation and still to have interaction with the surrounding. You meet the teacher, and it's not like so disturbing as on a long course. 2 times a month you have to talk to a teacher, and it's so wow. No, you can talk to your teacher freely. And even if you go to pick up your lunch and you say, ni kao la,
How are you?
ni kao la, you okay, so it's fine. It doesn't disturb because you're happy, you're more relaxed. I think, sure, you have, at least me, you can be more relaxed. Now I have seen different manifestations, and some people, they do live like on a course the whole, for a long time, but sooner or later they have to relax. Sometimes our health fails, and we have to go to hospital, and you go through experiences that make you to relax if you don't relax yourself.
Right.
So I think it's a more balanced way of being, because also you have to take care of certain things. And for the monks, they go for alms every day. So they still interact with people, and I think this is very good. And for me in Spain also, this was very valuable thing to do, to go and to see people and to feel that even just by seeing me, just for allowing them to see me, I already contribute to their life, actually.
How so?
How so? Do you see often a Buddhist monk or nun in the West? Do you often get an opportunity to give, to offer food to a monk or a nun in the West? You don't, and now these people have this opportunity. I thought, okay, so I'm meditating, and I'm doing the job that Buddha prescribes, and I'm giving them this opportunity. Yeah. So that was my attitude, and that was my contribution, I believe. And those who wanted to discuss something, and if I was able or they could speak English, then I also could support, So, so I think this interaction between laity and monastics is also very important for the practice of monastic. Not to be completely in somewhere above the clouds, like actually to live on earth. Yeah, that's what monastic life gives.
Right. And how about your family's reaction to your ordination?
My mother thought that this is another crazy thing she's doing. I think she thought that it will not last long. Maybe after some time I will come back, but then she passed away before I came back. So
I'm sorry.
no, that's all right. That happened. And when I went for the funerals of my mother, I talked to my father and I explained him in details how I live, what I'm doing, and how is my life. Because before, when my mother was there, I would talk to my mother mainly, and my mother would talk to the father somehow. We didn't have really direct contact. That was one. Another thing, my mother didn't want really to hear the details. She accepted, okay, she's a nun. Okay, she's like bald and wearing funny clothes, but never mind, she's my daughter. But all the other details, I don't want to know. Keep for yourself, okay? We accept you as it is, but I don't want to know much. But my father is very open, really, and I was so surprised. And he said, you can live like this? If I could, I would also.
Are they practicing Christians or?
No, they don't have any religion, as is quite common among that part of the world. But I taught my father Anapana, and he practiced, and he practiced just for a short while, and he told me, it works. I said, of course, like, what do you think? Am I crazy? I'm doing this for so many years, of course it works. Well, unfortunately, he doesn't practice now.
Yeah.
But I hope that this year I go and I see him and I stay for some time, maybe together, and we can somehow practice a little bit. I think if he feels more value to it, then maybe he can be motivated even just 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day.
Has he visited here?
No. Maybe with the time, I don't know.
Right. It can be monastic. Living as a monastic in this country can often be very austere and very rural. And another mutual friend we have, a monk from Europe, I think it was his mother that came to visit him, and I heard she was brought to where he lives, the forest kuti where he lives, and she broke down in tears. She was just so distraught that she knew these things, but she knew that what her son was doing and living here in the kind of life, but actually seeing the level of simplicity and open to the elements that he was living in, just seeing that her son was living like this exposed just brought her to tears.
Wow. Yeah, people don't understand really. In Spain, I spent about 3 months. I spent not even in a cave, on a rock in the mountains. And I was so happy just to see that you can live like that. You don't need anything. It's amazing. Nature doesn't do anything to you. You can live so in harmony and so simple. It just brings happiness to the mind. So, the simplicity, the more simple conditions, I think the happier the mind can be. If of course you're contented. If you're contented, if you're not, whatever conditions will be, you will not be contented. I don't see a purpose of really living in a very rich environment and much comfort. We search for liberation from the suffering because we see the suffering. If we don't have any dukkha and we don't see it, then there is no need to do anything.
Changing the subject a little bit, I'm curious about the experience of being a nun in a country where monks are privileged and where the bhikkhuni, or the formal nun order from the time of the Buddha, in Myanmar, in contrast to other Buddhist countries, is seen as broken and unable to be restarted. And because of this, Burmese feel much more merit when they're giving to a monk because they're true sons of the Buddha, whereas nuns are more like female spiritual renunciates than some formal lineage. So I'm wondering what your experience has been like as a nun and with your male monastic contemporaries, foreign monks by you, if you've seen a difference in treatment or experience.
Of course, that's unavoidable. And in the beginning, I was really shocked, but because I had no idea. For me, I had no idea when I became a nun that there is really a difference, and it was very painful in the beginning. But no choice, you have to accept, and because I value the Dhamma that I get here, I accept. Now it's like this. Nevertheless, I see many changes also here, and just recently I saw some pictures of Indian house I don't know whether it's like from embassy or whatever, many Indian women and men making offering to nuns, some Paok nuns and from some Do Nyanachari, I don't know if you know the like study center nuns. So the brown nuns, pink nuns, they had them all instead of monks, and they made offerings and they were preaching and they offered food also. So all, but they had nuns instead of monks, and I felt so happy for them.
So you were saying that you said something just now about how you had to accept that that it was painful, but there were these Dhamma teachings, and to access these Dhamma teachings, you just had to accept. I'm wondering, what did you have to accept more specifically?
That sometimes we are treated like lay people.
Can you give an example?
Especially for ceremonies. In the ceremonies, we are put together with lay people.
You're talking about the physical seating?
Yeah.
Right. And there's very orchestrated religious formal offering to monks of a very grand procedure and lots of very specific protocols. And it seems there's not that for nuns.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like thinking, and sometimes Myanmar men, they will sit in front of you because you're a woman. Myanmar layman, how do you feel about that? But then you just practice your vipassana, it's okay. So thank you.
Yeah.
Especially in Shan State, that was also quite shocking. For the men feel superior to women. Men, lay people, they tend to sit after bhikkhus, and sayalays are put after. Or the donors will be first and then sayalays. So I think that's quite inappropriate to me.
Right.
And anyway, I just hope maybe at some point things will change or what. But I'm really, I don't want to spend my energy to try to change anything, because these kind of changes have to come from inside. And we cannot, as a foreigner, I cannot come and tell them, oh, this is wrong, it shouldn't be like this, you should do like this. So this is why I was really happy to see these Myanmar nuns performing the role of monks, really. And also, they have to learn themselves, because sometimes I feel that Myanmar nuns being so humble and so they keep themselves, I don't think they even understand their own value. So that if some layperson wants to treat them better or wants them to do something that monks usually do, they don't know how. So that's also a problem. Right.
Given the current situation, do you think that something needs to happen going forward, that there needs to be some kind of initiative, or do you think it's like in an outer physical way, or do you think this is all an inner issue that men, women, lays, foreigners have to somehow do their own inner work?
I think the issue is quite complex. It's really, sometimes they tend to blame monks, for example, in the situation, but I don't think this is monks, this is the whole culture. And many times I have seen monks really, they appreciate you as much as they appreciate nuns as much as they appreciate monks. But the lay people, they have this conditioned perception from childhood. And how can that change? I don't know.
That's the question. Yeah. So what do you do with it? Do you use the word initially, accept? You just accept. So is that your basic practice? A lay person sits in front of you, enters a hall. All the lay people enter the hall or the cafeteria before the nuns. Actually, there's not much you can do in that situation. If a stream of lay people are going in, you certainly can't edge your way in front of them. Perhaps you could talk to management, or you could take a higher level approach. But then you're getting involved in a whole sort of societal and bigger conversation that maybe you wanted to get out of when you were ordained in the first place.
Yes, but what the one thing that was very liberating for me is, again, going to Europe. Because in Europe, you're just a beggar. You go to take alms, you're not even a Buddhist nun or anything, nobody knows. You're just a beggar standing there, a barefoot girl without hair who is hungry. That's all, So that kind of brings you into reality. This is reality, you are a beggar. So to imagine that you are higher than even a layperson, actually not.
So it's a very humbling experience.
Yes, yeah. Yes. So, or to the monks or whatever, So really, whenever painful feelings arise on this account, I just try to remember my experience in Spain, and just this puts me in a right place, I think, in a quite correct place. Because before going to that, I was like, of course, when you're meditating for hours and hours and hours, you tend to think, oh, I'm such a great meditator, look at me. Oh, who are you? You're just a beggar, really. Right. However, whatever your attainments are, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. In a society, this is how you come in a society, and you depend on these people. So if they treat like this, okay, it's their karma also, what they're doing or how they're doing.
Right. So you've talked a lot about the beauty of the simple life, the simplicity of being in robes. I'm wondering, I think this is a question a lot of foreign lay people do have when they look at what has to be given up in order to become a monk, and there's some fear and there's some attachment to everything I have around me, money, entertainment, good food, sexuality, free time, whatever these things are, companionship, family, comfort, and they see your life as kind of a rejection, whether they think it's a rejection or escape, but a canceling out of all these other things. And with that fear and attachment comes a question of that maybe I'll ask on behalf of this kind of mind. What do you miss? What do you feel you've lost? What do you what is difficult about the lay life or what is difficult about the monastic life that in lay life you had?
I don't know. No, I feel something completely opposite. I just feel freedom. No, freedom to be what I am. This is there.
This is what?
This is there in this life. I have freedom where I don't have to be anything that I'm not. So I don't know what I miss. I cannot think of anything I miss, really.
Is there anything you feel that you've sacrificed or you've lost or that you've let go of that is difficult in choosing the life you've chosen?
I hope some defilements we have abandoned. Some reduce that. But
or was there something maybe at the beginning that was difficult that's not as difficult now, the first couple of years?
I mean, the cultural differences, of course, this you have to adjust to try to understand the culture you're living in. So that from time to time can be difficult, of course. The food, and you have to eat rice every day and all this, But the mind is such a thing that it gets used to things very, very easily, very quickly. So I think I gained much more than I have lost if I lost at all.
So another topic, Myanmar, on the discussion of being in Myanmar. Can you talk generally about what your experience has been here of the country and the people?
Different experiences, but mostly I love the country. I already told you before that I really love the country.
What do you love about it?
I don't know. I love the people. I love how they are, their generosity, their open mind, the things that maybe other foreigners don't like so much. The here, the clear, the respect for the elders they have, the actually mutual respect. So everybody has his own place in the structure, and it's hierarchical, but everybody accepts that, and in this way there is harmony, so nobody's trying to be something that he's not. And in the same way, I'm a nun, accepted, okay, and I'm not trying to be a monk and to play a role of monk or anything. So okay, because this is the rules of the game, and I like it that just the simplicity and happy people,
How has being in Myanmar supported your practice, or how has it informed your practice? What have you gained by being in the country and in the culture?
I don't think you can gain it out of the traditional Buddhist country. Is faith. Is faith and in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And because here on the outlook, it looks like very ritualistic. And when I was staying in Indigo, we had this duty of offering food to the Buddha. So we would take for 1 week, each Sayalay would take the duty of offering food to the Buddha. So, but nobody explained me, what you're actually doing and how, what is your mind, what is the process actually behind the physical manifestation. And all right, so I would just see how other people do it, and I would do something similar. And I would sometimes observe some nun maybe sitting there, so she's offering food to the Buddha, and she sits there waiting for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and she's sitting and fanning. Oh, I think, wow, he even eats like a fan. Oh, he drinks and eats, it's so funny for the outsider. But actually, again, when I went out of the country and when I was in Spain, I started doing the same thing. And it supported me so much. I started offering my own alms before eating. I started offering to the Buddha. And it was really, I felt like, oh, Buddha is with me. And yeah, I'm not alone. When I would feel alone, and I did feel alone because there is no other nun or anybody, from the Buddhist. No, Buddha is with me. So I offer him food and everything and go to meditate happily. So I think this kind of practices, and they can be really experienced or taken on board, I think, in traditional Buddhist countries. Outside, I don't know.
So this is an example of like a cultural, even religious, local practice that just by being in its proximity, you've learned and gained and incorporated into your own life and practice.
Even if I didn't understand it initially,
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm just, as you talk, I'm just trying to find this quotation, and I just found it now because you talk about faith in Myanmar, and this is a quotation by a British colonial servant in the 19th century who, his name is Harold Fielding. In 1898, he wrote a book called The Soul of a People. And there's a passage that has always been one of the most significant and meaningful passages I've ever read of a foreigner describing the Buddhist life here and the difference of the Dhamma here and finding in one's own country. So I'd like to read this because
Sure.
your immediate answer of the power of faith immediately recalled to me
Sure.
the eloquence of the statement. So again, this is Harold Fielding, Soul of a People from 1898. To hear of the Buddha from the living lips in this country, which is full of his influence, where the spire of his monastery marks every village, where every man has at one time or another been his monk, is quite a different thing to reading of him in far countries, under other skies and swayed by other thoughts. To sit in the monastery garden at dusk, in just such a tropic dusk as he taught in so many years ago, and hear the yellow-robed monk tell of that life, and repeat his teaching of love and charity and compassion, eternal love, perfect charity, endless compassion, until the stars come out in the purple sky and the silver-voiced gongs ring for evening prayers, is a thing never to be forgotten. As you watch the starlight die and the far-off hills fade into the night, as the sound about you still, and the calm silence of the summer night falls over the whole earth, you know and understand the teacher of the great peace as no words can tell you. A sympathy comes to you from the circle of believers, and you believe too. An influence and an understanding breathes from the nature about you, the same nature the teacher saw, and from the whispering fig tree and the scented champax and the dimly seen statues in the shadows of the shrine that you can never gain elsewhere. And as the monks tell you the story of that great life, they bring it home to you with reflection and comment, with application to your everyday existence.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I can only sign under that.
Right. Yeah. So do you have any sense of how long you will stay here?
I don't know. But now with my mother having passed away, I may have to go sooner or later and stay with my father or something. I don't know. The future is very uncertain, but that only encourages me to make use of the time that while I'm here, while I'm still here. Yes.
Do you plan to stay on in robes for your life, or is that?
Well, unless circumstances push me to disrobe, no, I'm very contented. It's difficult for me to imagine to change. Of course, you never know. When we have common friends who do change, who have changed, but that is also a very difficult process for people. So I'm not sure if I want to go there.
Right. On the other side, is there anything about being in Myanmar that's difficult or that's frustrating or that you have a hard time with?
It can be, sometimes can be, like anywhere. There are many things, actually, that we can be dissatisfied about. But since I have moved to Shan State, somehow my mind has relaxed about many things.
And when did you move to Shan State?
In May. May, last year, May. So before that, because you have a certain level of noise all the time, or whatever, and you think noise, the pollution, the oil in the food, and so many things we can complain about. But now somehow, because I'm not all the time in the noise and not all the time have to eat very unhealthy food, so somehow my mind is very relaxed about that.
Right. Yeah. Lastly, I just want to know about your recent experience going to Shan State University, and also before that, you were involved quite a bit on a Pali translation project. Is that correct?
Well, I have translated some my favorite things maybe from Pali to Lithuanian, because in Lithuania really we don't have any Theravada, anything of Theravada at all. We have Goenka courses, and I think they have already the trust has already purchased the land. And there are plans to build a center in the long run and all that. But, the Goenka meditation thing is one thing, and Theravada Buddhism is not completely same thing. So we have nothing of Theravada Buddhism, let's say so. So I have written some articles in Lithuanian, and I've translated the suttas, which I think are important, especially about meditation, mostly about concerned with meditation.
From Pali to Lithuanian?
Right, and with the basic concepts of Buddhism. So, and now there are, since I'm in the university, there are many projects to get involved in. So I just have to decide and prioritize what I want to do and how. Yes, because luckily the Lithuanian language is very close to Sanskrit and Pali, and it's quite not so difficult for us to learn.
Interesting. The Lithuanian language is not so far from Pali and Sanskrit?
Yeah.
How
closer to Sanskrit, because we have we have these sounds that Pali doesn't have. But historically, I'm not sure. I had some discussions with some scholars about how it might have happened, how migration had happened and why. But the thing is that, especially Lithuanians, they're so... we are very few, and people are they're clinging to, holding on to the language. It's like their maybe national identity. And we have like a government commission for protecting the language, and you should only use this and that and everything. So they try to prevent the changes as much as possible. So, and I think that might be one of the reasons why we're quite close, especially like in grammatical structures. Grammatical roots, of course, we all Indo-European languages, we have similar roots to Sanskrit and Pali words, but...
Right. And were you involved, refresh my memory because I'm not quite remembering this full story, but there was some library in, was it in Mun State that, with some very rare Pali textbooks that...
Well, there is, right, so next to I'm not involved, I went only to see all this beauty.
Okay.
And yes, there is one library of manuscripts in Teton. It's not very old. It was established in the beginning of 20th century, but the texts that are copied, some are really rare and good, like in a quality. The manuscripts are manuscripts. It's just a beautiful place to go and see. So if anybody's in Myanmar and you go to Mon State, you go to Teton, by the entry to the Mettā Pagoda. On the left-hand side, there is, I think, Sadama Jyoti. I don't remember the name of the monastery, actually, but it's just where the stairs start. On the left side, there is a monastery, Pariyati Monastery. There are maybe about 70 novices or something, and they have Pitaka Dike. So they have a Tipitaka library, and you can ask somebody to show you, so they can take you and The manuscripts they kept in a like colonial cupboards, and the ceiling is golden, all well gilded, and the cupboards also as well, and it's all so beautiful. This library has been digitalized. There was a project from Japan with the collaboration of different scholars from all over the world, including my current Pali teacher, and it's available actually online. So if anybody's into manuscripts, you can read as much as you like. Yeah, it's very interesting.
So it sounds like for the next volume of the Meditator's Guide, another entry to it, there's all these kind of precious places just no one knows about that even in today's version of the internet, even looking online, it's very, very, very hard to get access of anything like this. So just mentioning it briefly in a podcast, someone maybe getting inspired to want to go, and then maybe someday we write a little bit more so people can find it more easily. So on the subject of study, which is what you're currently doing at the Shan State Buddhist University, actually, first, maybe you can talk about the origin of the Shan State Buddhist University, because it's a very new venture, correct?
Right. We are only second year. It's functioning only the second year. Actually, the founder is Sayadaw Dhammasami. So he's a rector, Sayadaw, and he in Myanmar he's rather known by another name, Oxford Sayadaw, because he's after getting his traditional monastic education, he went to Oxford actually and got his PhD from there. So for Myanmar people, this sounds very, very incredible that a Myanmar monk could go to Oxford and get PhD. So they really adore him and take him really regard him really highly. And so he had this idea that Myanmar traditional education, monastic education, it has a lot of knowledge, but what it lacks is the methods of analyzing and investigating analyzing the information that is there. Generally, there is no skill of critical or analytical thinking in the monks. They're just learning text by heart, and this is how they pass the exams. And so he established this place in order to bring together the traditional monastic education and the Western approach to Buddhist studies. And so the scholars from the West and the local monks, they can meet and they can exchange. One is a very good source of information. Another is has a great skill in how to analyze, how to put things together, how to write, how to ask questions. So that's what they're training the monks in. But even we are foreigners and we don't have the monastic education as that, we still can benefit a lot.
Right, and it should be noted that this is an author of a book called From Idealism to Pragmatism, I think the name of the book is, which I've read, and is a comparative study of the last several hundred years of monastic education between Thailand and Myanmar.
All right, that's his PhD.
Yes. So in short, Oxford Sayadaw makes this argument that the achievements Lady Sayadaw was able to have was, obviously all credit goes to Lady Sayadaw, but it was also a product of the monastic education system from which he came, and that a monk arising in recent times wouldn't have that broad flexibility and breadth and depth to be able to make the strides that Lady made, and that Mahagandhiyon was really critical of how it was developing. So it's just to give some background to the listeners, it's very interesting that a writer who would focus on this topic and come from this standpoint would, after producing this kind of flow of monastic education and where it got to today, and really decrying the dangers of rote memorization at a cost to all else, is now, in 2 years ago, has begun his own experimental monastic university, of which you're now a student.
Yes, and it's great. I think the place is quite unique, and I don't know, for anybody who wants to pursue some pariyatti knowledge, I think I really recommend, because in also what I have seen for the foreigners in traditional universities or here study centers, that they really struggle with this thing of memorization by heart only, and simplifying things and going only by tradition and learning like so many things that are irrelevant really for us on the path to liberation. So there I think you're free from that. You're free from that. And he has really good stuff with a high level of education mostly from UK, and not only, and they have all their degrees and articles and everything. So really, really good teachers. So.
And how many students?
We are now really small. But now there is only PhD and MA program, so we are about 30, maybe 30 plus. I think 30 plus. So it's very like family-like, which I love.
Foreigner Burmese? What's the?
Yeah. Foreigner Burmese.
Oh,
I don't know the proportion.
In English instruction?
Yes, in English. Very good English. You have to pass your TOEFL or IELTS if you want to join. So they put like good standard for English. It's because also one thing what like foreigners struggle here when they join other universities, that the medium is supposed to be English, but the teacher is hardly speaking English, so they cannot understand what the teacher is speaking. So.
Right.
So that's not the case in that university. So.
And how is Taunji?
I love it. It's cool. Literally, it's nice weather, lovely people, very clean food, and mountains. I love mountains. So yeah, it's wonderful.
No, Taunji literally means big hill,
big
mountain.
Yeah.
So just one last question about study. So. We've been kind of taking a Myanmar-centric view of the of monastic education and the role of study for Western listeners. Coming from this, many people that are interested in meditation and the Buddhist teachings come primarily from a practice-oriented viewpoint. There's a real drive to hear that message in terms of just practice. This is what's going to allow for the escape of suffering. Obviously, that's what brought you here, and that's what marked your for several years. And as you've talked about earlier, your transition into seeing the value of study, and you've mentioned even the insights into reality and the mind that you've had from study alone, what that's brought you. So I'm wondering if you could speak to a little bit about your transformation into seeing that value of study and what that value is.
Well, one thing when I read directly Pali text, then to me it sounds like the Buddha or whatever his disciples are speaking to me. So that alone is already so inspiring. So one thing is inspiration. Another thing is whatever method of meditation or practice you learn from a teacher, you just learn the way the teacher will describe how he went, what he practiced. But he didn't practice all, because we don't have to practice all. He will just describe his own way. But the ways are so many. And when we are familiar with the teachings more and more, we can judge really for ourselves where we are. We can rely more on the source rather than on some personality. I think maybe for Myanmar, that's not a problem, really. They have so much faith that anything the teacher says is, they will say yes. But for a foreigner, I think it's not the case. And we want to have the authority of the teachings. There are so many interpretations, again, even in the West, for the same topic, on the same topic, there will be so many opinions and so, that means that or whatever. That's not. Everybody they either will come from their own experience, or I have seen also, the impression that I get, some people give some weird explanation of just, I think, quite clear doctrinal points just in order to give a different explanation and maybe to be original in something. But I don't think there should be much originality. It's already more than 2,000 years old, the teaching. And for me, what has the really, really great value here is that I have an access to the traditional explanation of the teachings. How the Theravada interprets this or that, Then, of course, for myself, I can decide, well, yes or no, or whatever. But because people are sticking to this traditional explanation, maybe on the way other people will be, saying, oh, maybe like this, or like this, but it will not deviate too far. You cannot go too far because they stick to the traditional explanation, and nobody is really following or extrapolating on some alternative. You can have alternative, but you don't focus too much that it goes into some other realm. I don't know. So I just have a lot of trust into the teachings which we get from the scriptures. So if one can read directly, then we can clarify many doubts, I think.
So study has helped your own practice, would you say?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Also, not to be attached just to one view or this view or that explanation or whatever. It just makes the things broader. You see, Buddha taught so many people in so many different ways. So it just gives you freedom in your understanding of Dhamma, but keeps it within the Dhamma.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, it was wonderful. The remainder of the podcast will continue after a short break. This podcast is made by Dhamma practitioners for Dhamma practitioners. Let me take a moment to tell you about our team, who all bring technical skills along with their dedication to the Dhamma to this work. One sound engineer, Martin Combs, is a composer and producer living in the Netherlands. The other, Tharnge, is a local Burmese sound engineer who also helped us set up our recording studio. Zach Hessler is a former forest monk who lived in Myanmar that helps with content, and Ken Pransky uses his considerable skills in editing to help with our scripted content. As for me, I've been exploring how the Buddha's teachings are carried out in Myanmar for the last decade. We are very fortunate as well because to cut our costs as low as possible to produce as many episodes as we can at this high quality level. Some members of our team are willing to work on this project as volunteers, and others take only a very small fraction of their usual salary. However, even so, alas, these episodes cannot be produced for free. Given the extensive work that's involved in even one 90-minute interview, there is a minimum fixed cost. And to cover those costs, we rely on listeners like you that benefit from this content. If you find the Dhamma interviews we are sharing of value and would like to support our mission, we welcome your contribution. You may give via Patreon at www.patreon.com/InsightMyanmar, as well as via PayPal at www.paypal.me/InsightMyanmar. In both cases, that's Insight Myanmar one word, INSIGHTMYANMAR. If you are in Myanmar and would like to give a cash donation, please feel free to get in touch with us. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Sayalay Piyadassii as much as I did. There was a lot in that discussion to unpack, and for those less familiar with such concepts as vipassana meditation, Burmese Buddhism, monasticism, overall Burmese history, and the current state of Myanmar today, some parts of the talk might be worth reflecting on a bit more. For that reason, I'm going to connect with my good Dhamma friend Zach Hessler and share some thoughts about the discussion you just heard. Zach has quite a bit of experience in the Golden Land, from intensive meditation retreats and pilgrimages to work assignments, and for 3 years as a forest monk here. So he has quite a bit of background to draw upon in catching the deeper themes involved in the talk and bringing them in for consideration. We hope this reflection will provide listeners a broader context in which to place the content you've just heard. Zach is currently living in rural Thailand, and we'll just give a quick Skype call now to check in with him. Hey, Zach, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. How's your day gone?
Yeah, all right. Just cranking some projects out. Weather's nice here. It's like last time it was smoky here, but it's a little clearer today, which is a relief. How
yeah.
about you, man? What have you been up to today?
Actually, today I'm making sourdough bread. It's funny. I was kind of intimidated by bread baking for most of my my cooking life, and I've just got into it. And it's kind of ironic that we're recording this discussion about Sayalay today, because the last time I made sourdough was when we had her for the interview, and we had offered her lunch before the interview. So I wanted to make the sourdough ahead of time. It's a 3-day process with the recipe I follow. So we had this, hot, fresh baked sourdough bread to give her in Yangon that I thought she might get a kick out of, and mentioned that it brought up some old memories of her of the sourdough that she liked in Lithuania. I think I even referenced that in the interview. So just more to kind of think of her and remember the interview in unexpected ways as well.
Oh yeah, that's what that reference was. I didn't catch that when I was listening, but yeah, thanks.
Yeah, right. So yeah, ready to talk a little bit about that interview?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, one of the things that struck me when I heard it was just hearing like the shape of her journey, like as mentioned on the interview, there's this sense that renunciation can mean just doing the same thing over and over. It's almost a kind of boredom. Not to say that it is this way, but there could be a feeling maybe especially among Westerners who don't really know about the monastic life that this is what it could be, since you're stepping away from worldly issues. And I really liked how in the talk she demonstrated what a dynamic lifestyle she was able to have as a nun. It was this sense, even though she's following this strict code of discipline and she's really left a lot of worldly issues, as she describes pretty clearly in the interview, there's this sense that she's still always changing, always adapting, she's learning, she's growing. And I think for any meditator thinking about their own path and journey and where they are at a particular time, I just think it was so fascinating and so it's kind of so thought-provoking and introspective to think about one's own development as a yogi, just to hear how inventive she was always being. She had like these, she really demonstrated these critical faculties that she was always trying to determine what wasn't working out and how to change and what, kind of tinker with this here and what would lead to a more productive spiritual life and constantly this innovation and learning. We hear it as she's going from yogi to nun, and then she realizes she's practicing too hard and she goes to Spain. She tries something totally new in terms of, by herself, living in a new country, doesn't really speak the language, starting this practice of mettā in the cave. And then when she comes back to Myanmar, when it's time to do that, she then gets really into study and starts, using study in pariyatti to implement her practice as well. So this kind of constant growth within the spiritual field. And, it's this kind of innovation that it kind of invigorates the practice. It keeps it alive and fresh. It's curious, it's exploratory. And I think when Westerners, even when meditators, when they hear about nunhood or monkhood, any kind of monastic renunciation, it's hard to have, there might be a romantic or exotic quality of what it means to just focus on this contemplation of and mental development and cultivation, but it often there could be lacking this shape of how it works, what it looks like. And I thought what was really interesting about her interview was how descriptive she was in describing, both in terms of style as well as function, what that taste was for her, and to just see the different shapes and phases that her spiritual journey took. So I during the interview and then reflecting on it later, that was something that I really got a lot out of.
Yeah, right. I totally relate to that, because I remember when I was going to become a monk. I was kind of on this tour in the U.S., going around to all my friends and family and hanging out and spending some lay time with them, because I was going far away. Anyways, a lot of them had this worry about me, because I had lived such a free life that there's going to be this really limited life. That's how they perceived it. And I was trying to explain that. In life, there's an infinite number of things you can do, an infinite number of ways to live, being a monastic, just one of them. But when you take a slice of infinity, you still have infinity. So within being a monk, I realized there was a lot of different choices, ways to be, places to live, how to be a monk, what to focus on. And yeah, Sayalay's story was just such a rich example. She gave a lot of examples of not only the variety, but the mental states of discernment and exploration, investigation, like you said, what's working, what's not. Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting part of her story. And so, in another aspect, I was focused on is like uh, going out on her own. You know, in the first time, it was a physical thing, and it wasn't a choice. You know, it was just something that it was actually a recommendation of her teacher, right? So, you know, hey, go back home and as a nun, but you know, get yourself healthy again, and then go from there. And it put her in this spot where she was independent for a while. I was just reflecting on this that monks have a. It never really occurred to me before. It's kind of an insight that monks actually have this 5-year training. It's called dependency, where they learn the discipline and they learn the practice essentially. And after that 5 years, hopefully they've been well trained, and then they go out and have to make decisions on their own. And not that they're totally alone. They'll always have their teacher, and they'll run into other teachers and other inspiring people that can give support. But there is a sense of, it's called independence, actually, when you gain your independence after 5 years. And I'm just wondering if I mean, it just seems so rich, even if it happened inadvertently to her. I think it's a good one. It just seems, because of the way it's set up in the Vinaya for monks and nuns, it seems part and parcel of the Buddhist path. And so I think that's actually a good cue for us lay meditators as well, that there needs to be a point where we own our own Dhamma. And so then Sayalay's story, I mean, that's kind of, what's not like philosophy or belief, understanding of what the path might be, but listening to her story as it plays out it was really clear to me how valuable that piece is.
Yeah, right. And I think that, what's so interesting about foreigners that are becoming monastics is that they have so much choice in terms of the kind of monastic that they want to be. Because if you're, whether you're in Sri Lanka or Thailand or Myanmar, these Theravadan countries, you have some degree of choice, I think, in terms of the path before you as a monastic, but you're also very much constrained by the expectations of culture and such. And in, with Westerners, I think it's really a wide open field for what you want to do as a monastic. Of course, you are expected to follow the basic rules, even though you probably do get more of a pass at some of the Vinaya for not having as clear as understanding or kind of being helped along. But, for example, if you want to go into a monastic environment where you're really going to be trained in pariyatti, or you're going to be kind of left alone, you could do your own meditative thing, or you want to go into a traditional Thai setting where the 5 years are really mandatory. And I've talked to foreigners who've ordained as monks, and they've really decided, which country and which tradition and which part of the country they wanted to ordain in based on the level of freedom and constraint and support that they wanted. And, sometimes they can make pretty good decisions based on how they know themselves. Other times, there might be some traditional aspect which is not as comfortable or seems a little stricter, or you don't necessarily want to follow, but it might actually be better for you. So it's just this. It's kind of an interesting dynamic of foreigners going into monasticism, of having a little bit more freedom of choice in terms of where they go and what kind of experience they get, to probably varying degrees of success and getting whatever it is they're looking for. Because often in life, when what you get out of an experience, sometimes you have an idea of what you want or what you're looking for, and then you get something, sometimes entirely different, but that actually was more of what you needed at the time. So hearing what you said now also makes me kind of contemplate that wide open sense of freedom that foreign meditators would have.
Well, what I was impressed by is just how, whether it's by plan or by choice, she chose to ordain a PAOK and went really into that. And yeah, you're right. Some of the stuff you choose, ends up not working for you. Another thing, you just don't know what will work and what doesn't. It's just how Sayalay used her different experiences, whether her choice or inadvertent, really skillfully. And so one example is just like her gradual attainment of a toolkit. So, like I said, the pao, she really found that the nimitta of light was really good for this. And then in Spain, in the caves, she hadn't planned on this, but by necessity, and then being creative enough to utilize a different tool for that necessity, ended up really leaning on mettā for a while, and then saw where that was useful. Particularly, at the moment in that context, but then later on as well, there's situations her mind gets in that again is skillful, and she has this rich experience to lean back on. And then her other one is just being aware of changing itself. So these are three of the types of practices she moves between, depending on the conditions that are there. So again, this is a continuation of this kind of maturity of one's practice. From learning a lot of Dhamma and discipline from someone particular way, and then moving through and just utilizing experience and wisdom, by investigating to develop. It's obvious. It just, her story, her experience, and her articulation of it is just, it's the fruits of a good practice. It's so alive. That was fantastic.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that, I got that sense when I was listening to her talk, not just what she was saying, but how she was saying it, this sense that this is the fruit of her practice that we're witnessing, this whole presence of being. And to me, that was really encapsulated in one moment particularly, that my favorite part of the interview, one of the favorite parts of all the interviews I've done so far, is this line she says where she says, you don't need anything. The emphasis she says, you don't need anything. I must have listened to that line over and over and just had this kind of musical chorus to it. You make a series of memes out of it. It was just so alive and enriching. And, I'll tell you, as great as that sounded in the interview transcript, it was even more alive and energetic in the room in which it happened. It completely was like this energy that just, I felt, speaking from myself, wrapped all of us up, and just this sense of joy and aliveness and possibility. And, I just really like that moment of her expressing the joy and the simplicity and of just not needing a lot in the world, and how nature gives you what you want. And she goes on to explain what she means. But to me, just the energy and enthusiasm that phrase came out struck me as being many years of practice and mindfulness built in and encapsulated in that moment. The other thing that really stood out to me was her reflection on nunhood, just how honest and frank it was, and the balance that she struck. On one hand, being very honest in facing the discrimination that occurs, and not trying to minimize it or justify it or talk about, its cultural appropriateness or, traditional ways of being. Just being very frank of the pain that she experienced with some of the ways that monastics and men are privileged over nuns. Yet at the same time, in the middle of that frank discussion, or side by side that frank discussion, is acknowledgement that she is really responsible for her own mental states. And so, this is the reality, and she has to work with it. She has to work with to work with what is occurring and not letting it bring her into increasingly negative states, because obviously, and she checks in with herself, her reason for wanting to be a spiritual renunciate as a nun is to want to work towards mental purification and letting go of defilements of all negativity, even when that negativity may seem justified. And so I thought it was a really powerful and empowering balance to hear on one hand, the acknowledgement of some of these forms of discrimination, while at the same time working very sincerely to not be personally attached and to let go of the manifestations, and also to take a measure of excitement and enthusiasm when there's signs that things are going the other way, such as the example she gives of the India House sponsoring nuns on that particular day. So those two things really stood out for me.
Right. Yeah. It's so skillful because it's so easy to get caught up in the stories, especially when they're personal like that and painful. So it's not like she's become numb to these things. They're still really felt. It's a felt experience, and yet uh, hasn't lost her focus on what's important, and really is able to like keep in mind like what the benefits are of the overall life. Like she's still able to get out of this life what she's hoping to get out of it, as far as her, like you said, the development of her mind. And yeah, and then that other moment, yeah, you don't need anything. I wasn't there, but even just listening to it, it was like so alive. And it just encapsulates so much wisdom that can be drawn out and explained, of the ignorance of the mind, thinking more is more and less is less,
Mm.
when actually less is more, but she had lived it and just could blurt out this emphatic statement with such authenticity and deep joy of not just wisdom, but a joy that comes from wisdom, which is a type of wisdom that is liberating. It is joyful. I focus a lot on that because I do think in some practices, especially in Westerners, not all, because there are some different traditions, but we focus so much on wisdom that it can be forgotten that joy is a part of it, that the wisdom should bring joy. And then, like I said, I just said a bunch of stuff that's all encapsulated just in that phrase she blurted out. And yeah, and yeah, I probably didn't even need to say it because everyone heard it, and it's just so packed full of wisdom.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the way it came out, it felt like something at that moment before she uttered that phrase. It just felt it was building towards something, and then just the musical way it was burst out was really, really beautiful. Really great to get those moments here. Another thing that I appreciated about it, we didn't get this so much in the interview. It's something I know about her from friendship. She did mention it a couple times in the interview. Is just her relationship and feeling towards Burmese people and culture. There's long been a discussion of how or if or to what extent you can separate the Buddhist teachings in the culture in which they're taking place, especially an Asian culture, which has so much more roots and convention and tradition. And for foreigners coming here that want to engage, just kind of an open question of, should you be engaged? Should you engage with both at once, or is there a way? Is it even desirable, or is it even possible to, take on the teachings without going into the actual culture? And there's certainly, we certainly know a number of foreign monastics and meditators who have varying degrees of problems and issues with the culture. I'm sure it's that way in Thailand and Sri Lanka. We know more about Myanmar ourselves, and we've definitely seen, a share of foreign practitioners who have had their issues with Burmese culture. And Sayalay Piyadassii is not one of them. I mean, she is really, really happy to be here. And she does reference in the interview the part about gaining appreciation for making offering at shrines, and how much that was supporting her practice, and how much she enjoyed doing that. And that was just a moment there that I think just reflects a deeper part of her personality, of just what strides she's made to really want to be integrated in society and culture, and how much she really, really appreciates everything about it. How smooth her transition has been to coming from such a different place to being here, and to really be received warmly and to feel like home. I think she uses those words, to really feel like coming home. And that part of her journey as well was quite interesting.
Right. And even when it's foreign and unfamiliar to her, like someone just sitting there and actually fanning a statue of the Buddha while he's eating, so to speak. And I know what this mind can often do with that kind of stuff, and she held it in such a way that, she even dabbled in it, and then shared, I like how she shared later that there was a time and place where she used that, not those exact, what would I say? Not those exact habits, but the overall idea of appreciation, and utilized that when she was on her own in Spain, and how so in such a way that she didn't feel alone. So kind of personifying the Buddha somehow by offering some of her food to him, you know. And so, yeah, there is a skillfulness there. It's related to what we were just talking about as far as the way her attitudes towards the nunhood. Yeah, her attitude towards all of Burma, not every aspect of it, but those aspects that can be particularly tough for foreigners to accept. Yeah, she seems to handle them so well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, another thing that I'm really happy to hear is that Sayalay shared, not so much about her personal story, but just the existence of this university in Shan State. You know, it's like, you know, after doing the Shui Lan book and really learning more, you know, reading Eric Braun and learning more about Lady Sayadaw, and particularly like what you were mentioning in the interview about his Lady Sayadaw's kind of existing at the end of a particular era of this scholastic freedom that had a lot more investigation and broadness to it, not regimented, not what it became. And we learned in history that it became that way from a lot of external factors. It's not just the Burmese way of being. What we see now would be quite easy to judge. You know, what we see now is just, you know, learning things by memorization and you know, following a very strict structure. Everyone's basically learning the same thing in the same way, and it hadn't always been like that. And here we have this, so it's not a resurgence yet, but this well-respected Sayadaw basically starting this university, which incorporates some of, you know, some of the people there have learned, you know, they're like a walking encyclopedia because they've memorized all this stuff. And then mixing that with analysis and critical thinking, you know, which is, I just wonder how that may bode for the future of education in Burma, not just monastic, but in general, but specifically monastic. I think I'm just so glad that exists, you know. So I was just really happy to hear that. And again, her attitude, once again, she's not downplaying memorization and upplaying analysis and critical thinking. She gives this value to both. You know, another example of Sayalay's mental maturity. But anyways, yeah, the overall education. Yeah, one thing that really struck me was when she was expressing that, and so in such a surprising way, and I think surprising to a lot of us perhaps, that her biggest insight that actually lasted for days experientially was actually happened during studies and not on the cushion, so to speak. That this practice really, it's not that you can just maintain practice in between sitting on the cushions, that you can practice, but that practice itself can be like just as, if not more powerful. And it just opens the whole world of what good practice is. You know, I just thought that was a very powerful a lesson that's not just theory. It was actually her experience that she was expressing, and I just thought that was a really powerful moment.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And I think that, you know, your last statement, it's funny because the last statement you made just brings us back perfectly to the opening statement that I had, that, you know, you're talking about these different ways that she works with learning, with education, with development. And you're referencing basically these different educational models that she's kind of welcoming on them, you know, meditation and study, memorization and critical thinking. Learning her own, what works well for her own life and kind of innovating that way, and yet also respecting and even following, even when outside of Myanmar, certain very traditional Burmese Buddhist practices. And so I think that's, you know, that really hits the nail on the head of what we both appreciated about, you know, her sharing her journey and just being really inspiring for. I think what was really interesting about this is that I think you could be a meditator, a spiritual traveler of any background, tradition, lineage, and hear this. And as different as her life is, and as different as her choices might be, both in terms of what one's own background is, what one's possibilities are, and what one's interests are, I think there's so many ways to enter into this discussion and feel like just as she had some measure of freedom and, you know, struggle and critical thinking through her whole recent journey in robes, it gives pause for a lot of reflection on the decisions and the path that we have, even if there might be some differences in the actual mode of life. So that was great, and thanks again for checking in and having this conversation. Is really great to be able to share those thoughts, and hope you're doing well there.
Yeah, thank you too. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Yeah, take care. You have been listening to the Insight Myanmar podcast. We invite you to rate, review, and share our podcast, as every little bit of feedback helps. You can also subscribe to the Insight Myanmar podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Additionally, you can listen and download right off the web at www.insightmyanmar.captivate.fm. That's www.insightmyanmar, one word, INSIGHTMYANMAR.captivate, CAPTIVATE.fm. If you cannot find our feed on your podcast player, please let us know and we will ensure it can be offered there. There was certainly a lot to talk about in this episode, and we'd like to encourage listeners to keep the discussion going. Make a post, suggest a guest, request specific questions, and join in on discussions on our Insight Myanmar podcast Facebook group. And also welcome to join our Facebook and Instagram accounts by the same name, Insight Myanmar. If you're not on Facebook, you can also message us directly at burmadhamma@gmail.com. That's BURMADHAMMA@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to start up a discussion group on another platform, let us know and we can share that forum. We would also like to take this time to thank everyone who made this podcast possible, especially our two sound engineers, Martin Combs and Tharnge, along with Zach Hessler, content collaborator and part-time co-host, and Ken Pransky, who helps with editing. We'd also like to thank everyone who assisted us in bringing the guests who have made up the show so far, as well as the guests themselves for agreeing to come and share their stories. Finally, we're immensely grateful to the donors who made this entire thing possible in the first place. We also remind our listeners that the opinions expressed by our guests are their own and not necessarily reflective of the host or other podcast contributors. If you find the Dhamma interviews we are sharing of value and would like to support our mission, we welcome your contribution. You may give monthly donations at Patreon at www.patreon.com/insightmyanmar, or one-time donations on PayPal at www.paypal.me/insightmyanmar. In both cases, that's Insight Myanmar, one word. If you are in Myanmar and would like to give a cash donation, please feel free to get in touch with us.